They say if you stand in Centralia long enough, you can hear the earth breathing. But it's not the wind you're hearing. It's smoke. It's heat. It's the fire burning beneath your feet. A fire that's been alive longer than most who ever lived there. This wasn't always a ghost town. Centralia, Pennsylvania, was once full of life. Churches ringing, children laughing, coal miners trudging home covered in soot and pride. A small American town built on hard work, family, and the coal beneath its soil. But in 1962, something happened. Something small. Something seemingly harmless. And like so many tragedies, it was ignored. A fire meant to clean up a landfill slipped into an open coal seam and never stopped. The streets didn't crack open overnight. The homes didn't vanish in an instant. No, Centralia didn't explode. It withered. Over the next decades, the fire spread silently underground, turning foundations into fragile shells, sending toxic gas through basements, and splitting the earth wide open. People were forced to leave. Homes were torn down. But some stayed, even as the fire refused to die. Today, there are no schools, no stores, no zip code, only a handful of homes, and a cemetery where smoke still rises. Centralia isn't just a town that vanished. It's a warning of what happens when danger smolders unseen, of how a place and a people can disappear not with a bang, but with a whisper of smoke. And yet, the fire still burns, beneath the surface, beneath the silence, still waiting to be remembered. It started, like most disasters do, with something ordinary. It was May 1962. Centralia's landfill had grown full again, as it often did. Trash, tires, debris, all piled high in a pit carved from an old strip mine. And someone had an idea. Why not burn it? Open burns weren't unusual back then. Small fires were used to manage waste, especially in mining towns like Centralia. It was cheap, quick, efficient. So, the fire was lit. But this landfill wasn't just a trash heap. It sat just above a maze of abandoned coal mines, veins of anthracite that still threaded beneath the town like roots. What no one realized, or what some ignored, was that a fissure may have connected the landfill directly to the mine shafts below, and the fire slipped through. Just a spark at first. But once inside, it found oxygen, fuel, a labyrinth of tunnels stretching for miles in every direction, and it began to feed. In the surface gave no immediate clue. There was no explosion, no alarm, no red glow on the horizon, only faint signs. A strange warmth radiating from the ground, a sulfuric smell that clung to the air, smoke seeping from cracks that hadn't been there yesterday. But Centralia was a coal town. People were used to strange smells, to steam and soot. And so, the warning signs were dismissed, misunderstood as minor nuisances. Months passed, then years. By the time local officials realized the fire hadn't gone out, that it was spreading, it was already too late. Multiple attempts were made to dig it out, smother it, contain it. But the fire moved like a living thing, deeper, wider, faster than anyone could predict. It danced through forgotten shafts, it ducked under neighborhoods, it crept beneath schools and cemeteries, and no one could see where it was going next. It wasn't just a fire, it was a secret. And beneath the calm streets of Centralia, it was growing. At first, the warnings came in a whisper, a thin veil of smoke rising from cracks in the earth, a strange heat pulsing up from sidewalks, even in winter, basements growing so hot that plastic melted. People began reporting headaches, metal warped in their tool sheds, and animals avoided certain parts of town, circling wide around spots where the soil seemed wrong. Then the gas came. Carbon monoxide, invisible, tasteless, deadly, began seeping into homes through floorboards and foundation cracks. Some families woke dizzy. Others never woke at all. Test kits placed in homes returned with terrifying numbers. Still, many stayed. They patched the cracks. They blamed faulty heaters. They prayed it was temporary. But the ground had other plans. Yet on Valentine's Day, 1981, the fire almost claimed its first child. 12-year-old Todd Domboski was playing in his grandmother's backyard when the earth suddenly opened beneath him. A sinkhole, wide, steaming, and nearly 150 feet deep, swallowed him whole. He clung to a tree root, screamed for help. Had his cousin not been nearby, Todd would have vanished into the fire-fed void. By the time they pulled him out, smoke was billowing from the hole, laced with carbon monoxide. The town could no longer pretend. What lived beneath Centralia wasn't just dangerous, it was hostile, and it was rising. Panic spread. The media descended. Scientists arrived with sensors and equipment, trying to map the burn. But the coal seams were too vast, too interwoven and unpredictable. Every attempt to extinguish the fire, digging fire breaks, flooding shafts, even sealing sections with clay, failed. It was like trying to cage a ghost, and the fire only grew bolder. Yards buckled, cemeteries steamed, smoke curled from the mouths of old mine vents and storm drains. People began asking each other in hushed tones, was the town safe? Were the fumes making them sick? Would their children fall through the floor? No one had answers. Not the town council, not the governor, not the engineers. But slowly, a terrifying truth took hold. Centralia was dying. Not in an instant, like a bomb or a flood, but in silence, in whispers, from deep underground. By the early 1980s, the whispers had become screams. Centralia had gone from a strange curiosity to a national emergency. Federal scientists descended on the town with thermal imaging, gas monitors, and geological surveys. What they discovered was chilling. The fire stretched for miles beneath the town, feeding off the anthracite coal like a living organism. The underground temperature in some spots surpassed 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it wasn't slowing down. The government had a choice: spend tens of millions of dollars, with no guarantee of success, trying to extinguish the fire, or relocate the people above it. They chose relocation. In 1983, Congress approved $42 million to buy out homes and businesses. At first, it was voluntary, but soon pressure mounted. Some residents accepted, reluctantly signing away homes that had been in their families for generations. Others resisted, convinced the danger was overblown, or that the fire would eventually burn itself out. That divide split the town in two. At community meetings, neighbors argued. Some pleaded for everyone to leave before someone else died. Others called it hysteria, or worse, a government land grab. As the buyouts began, the exodus slowly unfolded. Families packed up their lives, their memories, their heirlooms, all while their houses still stood tall and clean, untouched by flames or ash. And that was the hardest part. The town didn't look destroyed. There were no collapsed roofs, no blackened ruins, no raging firestorms. From the street, Centralia looked fine. But underneath, it was hollow. A church might still have stained glass windows, even as the ground beneath it steamed. A playground might still stand, even though no children played there anymore. A post office might still receive mail, for addresses that no longer existed. School bells stopped ringing. Local shops closed their doors for the last time. The cemetery on the hill watched silently as its living neighbors disappeared one by one. By the end of the decade, most homes had been demolished. Blocks once filled with laughter, light, and Sunday dinners were reduced to grassy lots, overgrown sidewalks, and street signs pointing to nowhere. And the silence, grew. For many, leaving wasn't just about losing a house. It was about losing a part of themselves. A place where first steps were taken, where memories were made, where generations were buried. They didn't just leave a town. They left a life. Even after the buyouts, even after the demolitions, even after the streets were unmarked and the zip code was erased. Some stayed. Not many, just a handful. But for those few, Centralia was not something to be abandoned. It was something to be held on to. They were the holdouts, the stubborn, the forgotten. Some stayed out of principle, convinced the fire wasn't as dangerous as claimed. Others stayed out of grief, unwilling to part with the place where their parents were buried, where their children were born. And some simply refused to be told to leave their home by anyone, government, scientist, or otherwise. They lived among ghosts. The streets were empty. Mail no longer arrived. Schools were gone. There were no stores, no police, no fire department. Just crickets at night and smoke rising in the distance. And still, they stayed. Life in the ruins was quiet and surreal. For decades, street signs pointed to nothing. A single row of mailboxes, still nailed to a metal pole, served as the last tether to the outside world. Nature reclaimed what was left. Grass grew through sidewalks, trees rose where houses once stood, and the fire beneath never stopped humming. The few remaining residents lived in isolation, not just physically, but legally. Because in 1992, the state of Pennsylvania invoked eminent domain. The last properties were seized, but the residents refused to go. So began a legal battle, not to restore the town, but to remain inside it. One resident, George Barletta, once said, "This is my home, my land. The fire hasn't touched me yet. Why should I leave?" Another, John Lukaitis Jr., became a symbol of resistance, keeping up his yard, repainting old signs, even decorating for holidays long after everyone else had left. His defiance wasn't just about a house. It was about memory, about roots, about refusing to let the silence win. In 2013, the remaining residents finally reached a settlement with the state. They would be allowed to live out their lives in Centralia. But when they passed, the land would revert to the government. No heirs. No rebuild. Just a countdown to extinction. Today, only a few homes remain. No street names, no census data, just whispers, and heat rising from the earth. They were the last ones standing. And one day, they too will be gone. Today, Centralia is less a town, and more a scar. No signs point to it. No stores welcome you. No homes line the streets. But still, people come. They drive past overgrown roads, park near the crumbling cemetery, step into the silence, and they look down at the earth, still breathing. Beneath the cracked pavement, the fire still burns. 60 years later, the ground smolders quietly, rising in wisps of smoke that curl like ghostly fingers through the weeds. The air is warm, the soil, unnaturally soft in places, and the wind carries a faint, bitter trace of coal. What was once Pennsylvania Route 61, the main road into town, has become known as Graffiti Highway. A colorful, chaotic canvas of names, messages, art, and protest, sprayed over blacktop that now leads nowhere. The government closed the road, but the people reclaimed it, turning it into an accidental memorial, a place to mark presence in a town that tried to erase itself. Of the original buildings, almost none remain. A few stubborn homes, a rusted swing set, a mail drop still bolted to the ground like a forgotten relic, and the cemetery, still there, still quiet, still watching. Centralia's story didn't end with fire. It evolved into myth. 8. In the early 2000s, Centralia became the inspiration behind the video game and film Silent Hill, where fog, ash, and dread hang over a town abandoned by time. Since then, the real Centralia has drawn curious travelers, urban explorers, and thrill-seekers chasing the line between reality and legend. But Centralia is no ghost story. It's a warning of what happens when negligence goes unchallenged, when danger hides in plain sight, and when the cost of inaction is buried. Not beneath paperwork, but beneath our very feet. It's a place where a fire has outlived its town, its people, and its purpose. A fire that consumes, quietly, patiently, forever, and as long as it burns, so does the memory. Centralia was never wiped off the map. It faded, not in fire and fury, but in silence, in inaction, in whispers no one wanted to hear. It burned beneath backyard swing sets, beneath birthday parties, beneath wedding photos and Sunday morning coffee, until, one by one, the lives built on top of it collapsed into memory. The town didn't die when the fire started. It died when people stopped believing it mattered. What Centralia leaves behind isn't just ash and steam. It's a lesson about how easy it is to ignore danger when it hides underground, about the cost of denial, of waiting, hoping, and doing nothing until it's too late. It asks us, what other fires are burning today that we refuse to see? What silent disasters grow beneath the surface, in our towns, our systems, our world? Centralia is not just a place. It's a metaphor for forgotten warnings, for overlooked voices, for everything we think we've buried, but haven't. And so long as the ground there smolders, so long as the air still whispers smoke, the town that went silent will never stop speaking. What do you think Centralia represents? Have you ever seen a forgotten place like this, physically or metaphorically? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to Minds Behind History for more stories that were almost lost.